Who's the author of the book, This Is Us, the New American Family. This is a story of his adoption of 3 abandoned Mexican-American siblings who had been lost in the social service system. He had led an interesting life up to that point, prep school, law school, lots of adventure travel, a professional career, but he still longed to be a father. He was in his 40s, divorced, with no experience of raising children. It took him nearly 2 years to complete the adoption process, but in February of 2004, he brought home 2 boys and a girl, ages 2, 4, and 6. And his life just got a lot more interesting. Marin is currently Vice President of Advertising for Main Street Media Group. That's the publisher of the Morgan Hill Times. He lives in Gilroy with his 3 children, who are now 10, 12, and 14. Cinda from Booksmart is in the back, and she has copies of his book if you'd like to get one, and he'd be happy to sign copies at the end of his presentation. So please join me in welcoming David Marin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol. Welcome. I adopted 3 children in 2005. The adoption went through. I did this as a single parent. And my kids were actually in a witness protection program. They were abandoned by felons in Santa Barbara County. So the question that I get most often is, what were you thinking? So what I was thinking was that I always wanted kids. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters when I was growing up. I was used to a household full of action and commotion. And what happened instead is that by the end of my 20s, I was divorced with no kids. And then in my 30s, I went to graduate school, and my career moved me around. All of a sudden, I was 40 years old with no children, and I thought, this is not how I wanted my life to be. So I actually met someone who had adopted. I did not know that single people could adopt. And so I ended up at an orientation session for social services in downtown Oakland, where I lived at the time. And I took the classes, interviews, references, background checks. I tell people I've been fingerprinted more than anybody they know who's not in jail, and eventually got my foster care license. So I moved to Santa Maria, California, and I got a call at work one day from a social worker who said, I have 5 children, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Can I bring them over? They need a place to live. No one wants them. And I said, no, I'm by myself. That's crazy. So 3 weeks later, he called back and said, I placed the older 2 girls, that my kids have 2 older sisters, with their fathers. There are 3 children left. Would you like to meet them? And so I said, okay, I would meet them. So 2 months later, lots of delays in the social services game. I met my kids in a foster home in a neighborhood populated by field workers. We were about 100 yards from the strawberry fields of Santa Maria. They sent a translator because they weren't sure my kids spoke English. My Spanish was pretty weak. The foster mother did not speak English. And I knew when the door opened and I saw my kids that I would adopt them. It was like that. They were delightful, sweet, bright-eyed, full of energy. And so this, my buttons aren't working. There we go. You have to love that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you blow a talk about this, right? So this was the first night in our house. And having waited so long to be a parent, remarkably, I had no toys, no kids' medicine, no little forks, no car seat, nothing. So the kids are in the house, I panic, I have no toys. I call my mom and say, what should I do? She says, do you have a box for moving? And I said, yeah. She says, put it on the floor. Tell them it's a toy. If you say it's a toy, it's a toy. And so I did that. Should we turn the lights down a little bit? Might be easier to see with the lights down a notch. Better for everybody?
That's good.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
Oh, it's okay. I'll get the PowerPoint from you and I'll just. It's okay. You can bring it down.
let's go back to this.
Yeah, good.
So the one in the middle, 2 years old and diapers. I had to go buy diapers, right? I never bought diapers in my life. Why would I? So I'm at Walmart and I see way down there's a little shelf with diapers on it. And I think, okay, those are the diapers, right? I go around the corner and there's this wall, 14 feet high, 70 feet long. And I'm thinking, what the hell is this? Pull-ups, plumpers, Pampers, all these kind of different diapers. And I'm staying there trying to figure out what to do. And not only that, the sizes are in kilograms, right? And I just met the kid. Not only that, when I met him, social services didn't know his name. So they said it could be this or it could be that. So I'm staying there thinking, okay, I not only don't know how many kilograms he weighs, I don't even know his name, and I'm not sure what to do. So a lady comes by, and she knows exactly what diaper she wants, so I get embarrassed, and I see a package with a little Hispanic boy on it, and I buy those. And I think maybe that's how you do it, right? And I had that package a couple of years later. I don't think they fit. So this is my little one. They said his name is Craig, or maybe Chris. He was just a little baby, in diapers. He didn't speak. He kind of made noises and grunted and moaned. 27 months old. I did not know how old kids were when they started speaking. So I asked people at work. I said, is this normal? Should you be saying something? And they say, how old is he again? And I say, 27 months. And they go, eh. So we had a breakthrough about a month later. He said his very first 2 words. This is the R-rated version. We were at the grocery store. I was paranoid at the beginning that I would lose one of the kids and get in trouble. So every time I went shopping, I put them all in the cart. So I'm putting food in between their legs. It's not a good system. A lady at work says, get a card for them, get a card for the food. And I thought, no. So we're in an aisle. We round the corner. He points to something that he wants. And I say, not now. And he cries out, fuck you.
Oh, no.
Yep. So, thinking he learned that in foster care. It was like a 2x4 upside the head. They did not mention anything about that in the training classes. So I said, you're welcome. And the kids were looking at each other thinking, makes sense. And I never heard those 2 words again. It was amazing what they picked up and what they brought with them. My 4-year-old, a dimpled delight and a talented little forger. After I had her for about a year, she came into my room and she says, Daddy, what's a signature? So I told her, and I showed her how to draw her name and that sort of thing. And I said, and this is what mine looks like. And so she went away to practice. Well, a few weeks later, cleaning out her backpack, I find a note from the teacher saying she'd been talking too much, and there's my signature. 5 years old. So, when I got my kids, they had nightmares, particularly the youngest, too. And the nightmares were about the robbers. They were afraid of the robbers. The book begins with a chapter called The Robbers. If we got home and there was a light on, they were worried it was the robbers. If there was a noise outside, they worried about the robbers. At 2 in the morning, my little one would be knocking on my door, his hair wet with sweat, afraid of the robbers. I'd take him to his crib screaming about the robbers. So we made it a game. I would destroy the robbers. I would say to the kids, the robbers won't come into our house, and if they do, I'll get them. Then what, Daddy? And so we played this game often when we went on road trips. I'll kick him in the stomach, and then what will you do? I'll tear off their arms. I'll throw them in the river. Oh yeah, he's going to throw them in the river. So we played this game for months. Daddy, tell us what you're going to do to the robbers. So it was kind of fun, but it didn't really work because the nightmares continued. So I decided to try to figure out who the robbers were. And I figured a good approach would be to figure out what the robbers took, right? I would ask them. The old regime that they were with were felons, so there may have been robberies there with guns and drugs or whatever. So I asked my daughter, what did the robbers take? And her answer was, they take us. So my question to you is, do you know who the robbers are? Anybody want to guess? My kids were in 4 foster homes. That's exactly right. So her answer was, to who the robbers, the social people and the police. My kids did not like social workers, and my kids did not like the police. They were terrified of the police. And I might have seen it coming. I recall then that after I had the kids just a few weeks, I had them all crammed into their car seats in the back seat of the car. And we pulled up to a red light, and there's a police car right next to us. And I can see in the rearview mirror my daughter talking to my son, and she says, look, hey, it's the police. It's okay. We have a car. We can get away. So when we went out to events and saw the police, they would hide behind me. So I spent a couple of years telling them what the police do and introducing them to the police at functions and fairs and festivals and that sort of thing. And the nightmares ended, but when we moved here, I'll say maybe 4 years ago, and I've had my kids now for 8 years, my smallest one went around the house to our new house and told me where he thought the robbers could come in if they came. So those are lasting impressions. My 6-year-old, Ricochet, I nicknamed him, I'll tell you why. He had a tough life. He was in 4 foster homes. Told me at one foster home he slept in a box. In another, there was another situation where he had these marks on his hands, and I asked him what happened. He said he got them at bad foster. He did not trust a soul. He did not trust a human being. When I took him to work, all 3 kids, to introduce them to colleagues, he stood in the corner like this. He just didn't look up. He had nothing to say to anybody. He wanted nothing to do with anybody. He trusted no one. He told me when he was younger that he was always hungry. He talked to me about how he used to go to the backyard at night and get into the rabbit cage and take the rabbit's food and eat that. He told me how he learned to rub food on his lips that he could taste later when he didn't have anything to eat. A tough, tough time. He was tired and poor and tempest-tossed, like the Statue of Liberty says, but there was no lamp at the golden door, not for him, not then. The Big Shadow is a chapter about me learning about my children's past. I knew nothing about them when they came into my home. The social worker assigned to me at the time had never met the kids. And the social worker assigned to the kids barely knew the kids. So I knew nothing, except what the kids told me, little things here and there. So one day at work, my social worker calls and says, I have some papers I want you to see. And at this point, I'd known the kids for about a month. But like I said, when I met them, I wanted them. So in my heart, I was going to take them. And he said, I want you to read this before you make a commitment. So I went to social services, went to a 2nd-story room with no windows, and I sat down and read 3 pages of reports. And I imagined that the children's issues with social services began 1 or 2 years earlier. And in fact, the reports began 10 years earlier. Before their oldest sister was born, the mother had been reported for doing drugs and drinking while she was pregnant. And so these reports continued 2, 3, 4 times per year. Homeless, neglected, abuse, anything, wandering, no food. And I read social services couldn't find the mother, case closed. Or social services would go and read the mother, the definition of child abuse, case closed. One time, a babysitter called to say the mother had left the kids there 2 months earlier and not come back. And social services investigated and found out it had only been 20 days, case closed. And so then once in a while they take the kids out and then they put it back and out and back and out and back, re-gifted. 4 foster homes. My kids were really good at hiding. I remember one time I left the foster home when I had been there for a visit. I went outside to wait for the foster mother. They thought I was leaving the house and going home. And when I came back in, they were hiding themselves into a cabinet. They just did not trust adults, and that's the way they reacted to that. So they came into my home, and I'll tell you, it was just an amazing experience. I compare it in the book to, I went skydiving when I was 18. Back then, you were on your own. It wasn't a tandem thing. And when I landed anyway, the jumping was terrifying. When I landed, it was a great feeling, right, of exhilaration that lasted for like 2 or 3 days. When I graduated from law school, a great feeling that lasted 2 or 3 weeks. This lasted 2 or 3 years. Every day I was so happy to be with them, so proud of them because they were growing and learning. So we left town. We went to the Horse Whisperers Ranch in the Santa Ynez Hills. We went and found elephant seals. We found an ostrich ranch. I remember one day reading in the newspaper that a beaver had been spotted in a pond nearby, so of course we went over to find the beaver. So I could tell when we left Santa Maria that they felt better. They had a lot of bad memories in that little town, the foster homes, the this and that. And so I knew in the back of my mind that we were going to have to go at some point, right? So, when you're a pale redhead like me and you adopt 3 Hispanic kids, you get introduced to the senior side of life in the U.S. I'm talking about discrimination. There is a chapter called Visiting Santa Barbara, and the first sentence goes like this. Visiting Santa Barbara, I recommend the downtown 4-star Andalusia Hotel with its rooftop pool unless you have 4 little Mexican kids with you. So we arrived in the afternoon. We were there and we met one of the kids' older sisters. I was helping unload the car with the valet. I told the kids to go into the hotel and have a seat on the couch. And the hotel has a big glass wall, so I watched them go in and sit down. They're pretty well behaved. I also watched the guy in the suit watching them like this as they came into his hotel. He met me at the counter. Are they with you? And I said, yeah, they are. Are you staying here? We are. I can find you another place to stay. I'll make some calls. You'll be more comfortable. Our rooms are very small. It's no trouble. No, we're good. We'll stay here. No, just a couple of calls. It won't take long. No, we're good. This is not our first time in a hotel. We'll be all right. So I turn to the lady at the counter, and I say, is the rooftop pool heated? Oh, no, he says. You don't want to go up there. The pool's very small and crowded. You don't want to go to the swimming pool. So I knew there was a pool. The kids brought their suits. I thought we might go swimming, but now we were going to go swimming.
Yeah.
And we were going to go swimming right now. So that's what we did. You can see the pool. It's not small and it's not crowded. In fact, there are only 4 people in it. All of them mine. One of them dressed up like Spider-Man. Pretty impressive, huh? So I'm laying there on one of the lounge chairs. I skipped a part. The reason he didn't want us in the pool is because this rooftop perch, they called it, was a venue for a party for Santa Barbara's finest folks, right? So nice ties and dresses, and he didn't want them to suffer the indignity of seeing my kids, I suppose, right? So I'm laying there reading, and he's there in a few minutes, right? He walks up to the pool and yells out, "Who's watching these kids?" And I say, "Right here," the guy from downstairs, and you can just see the steam coming off his head. I said, we could use 4 extra towels if you don't mind. So he gets on the phone, calls the people, we get some extra towels. We get done swimming, we're We're down in the room, rushing up to go out to eat. Open up the door, there he is. He turns and walks away. He's been listening to us. We get back for dinner, up in the morning to get breakfast, open the door, there he is. Turns and walks away, listening to us again. So we have these issues in our country, let's say, which I didn't really pay much attention to before now. Which brings us to this week's quiz. Question: which U.S. president was the last to sign into law legislation granting amnesty or citizenship to illegal immigrants? Lyndon Johnson in the 60s, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan. Not a lot of people guess that correctly, right? Because now if you're a Republican and you have any feelings at all for immigrants, you're out, right? Ronald Reagan signed that legislation saying people who are here and honest and working deserve a chance at a better life. It wasn't that complicated. Part 2. Which U.S. senator first proposed the DREAM Act? The DREAM Act is federal legislation that was defeated in Congress a year ago this month by Senate Republicans. And the DREAM Act offers a path to citizenship for kids who go to college or serve in the military. So, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, Orrin Hatch, Olympia Snow, Ted Kennedy.
Olympia Snow?
Orrin Hatch. Orrin Hatch, Republican conservative, Orrin Hatch. First proposed the DREAM Act. Orrin Hatch has a new website. This isn't on it. Okay? He has a list of his accomplishments. No, scrubbed. Yes. So, these are the children who are hard to adopt. If they're older than 2, they're hard to place in a home. If they're a minority, they're hard to place in a home. If they're a sibling group, they're hard to place in a home. My kids had it all, right? The Cinderella story, older than 2 minorities and part of a sibling group. So I want to give you an update on how my children are doing today. My little one, who didn't speak, reads 200 or 300 pages a week. He's a smart little kid, very curious, full of life, plays the flute in the band. Well, he thinks he's playing the flute. No, not really. He knows about 8 notes, but I don't care. I love to hear him play, right? A delightful little guy. He wants to go to Stanford and become a prospector. Silver, gold, he doesn't really care. Which is better than what he used to be, because he used to want to go to Stanford and become a sniper. I swear to God. So where that came from, because I have to explain it, right, is a couple of years ago, my kids were so shy, I decided during the summertime that I would give them topics, right, while I'm at work, and they had a nanny. And they would research the topics, and then they would stand up and give a little report on their results, right? So with my daughter, I would say, who's this famous scientist? Or and with my son, he was interested in the Army, so the topic was how do you become a general, right? So he went on the Army website and he found a sniper game, right? And so he thought that was kind of fun. So he told me that he wanted to go to Stanford and become a sniper. My daughter has 6 grades on her report card, 5 A's, been on the honor roll the whole time. She's a tough little cookie. She told me months ago she wanted to join the cross-country team. Well, she has asthma, okay? She can't run around the block. But I said, okay. So you have to try out for each meet. The top 10 kids make the team, the rest maybe next time. She finishes in 40th place, okay? So, okay, that's not good. The next time, 28th place. And I'm thinking, okay, you're going to have to talk to her about how you can want things, but you don't always get what you want, something brilliant, right? The 3rd race, she finishes 13th, okay? So, the 4th race, the last opportunity to make the team, I sneak away from work, I'm standing on the path, I swear to God, I did not recognize the kid running down that path. If you were in the way, she'd probably knock your ass right into the ditch. The determination on her face was unbelievable. She finishes in 8th place and she makes the team. Just amazing. My oldest, this is not in the book, actually. I should have put it in there, but one of the meetings I had with social workers, when the kids came into my home, they came to visit once a month, more or less. A social worker says to me, he's going to have some trouble in school. And I said, well, he's doing pretty well. He was in the first grade, and he got good marks. And I said, well, why do you say that? She says, well, you can tell because of the space between his eyes. And I said, well, what does that mean? And she says, oh, well, it doesn't mean anything. So I think what it meant is that if your mother is drinking or doing drugs, one of the manifestations of that is you have more space between your eyes or something like that. So I don't know about the space between his eyes, but I know about the space behind his eyes, okay? And that's right here. Honor roll for 8 years. His STAR test that he took in junior high scored in the top 1% of California science students, okay? His math teacher in 8th grade confiscated his 2 10,000-point math reports to show kids what a perfect score looks like next year. Has a certificate for having one of the highest math scores at Soldiers Honor High School, or junior high, a pretty competitive school. A full slate of honors courses this year. His math teacher told me in May, see if we can find him a math class this summer at Gavilan. I thought he meant a math camp or something where they eat cookies and play basketball. He meant, no, a real math class at Gavilan. So my 14-year-old, who is old enough now to drop out of school and work in the fields, and that's legal, that's okay. Our society accepts that. He would join other field workers with an average education of 8 years. Goes to Gavilan. You have to take the entire assessment test to take any course at Gavilan. ACES reading, ACES English, ACES math. The counselor at Gavilan says he can skip high school and just come here right now. He's smart enough. He didn't want to do that. But he rode his bike 5 miles each way to Gav this summer to take a math class with adults. Okay? So that's the space behind his eyes. Right? So I wrote This Is Us because I want people to understand that the kids no one wants, the ones who are hard to adopt, are in fact full of life and potential. And I wrote it because when I took 3 kids out of the foster care world, I left about 500,000 behind. There are a lot of kids in foster care. And I don't imagine I got the only 3 who are great. There are a lot of kids out there with great potential. That's all I have for my normal talk. I'm happy to take questions. Please, I enjoy the questions more than the talking, actually. Yes, sir.
Do the children still stay in touch with their oldest 2 sisters?
Yeah, good question. So, it was a tough crowd. The parents were basically gang members. And when the kids came into my home, my social worker said, no contact, don't let them know where you are. So there was nothing there for about 9 months until the rights of the parents were severed in court. Then he said you could contact the girl's older sisters. So that court date came. None of the parents attended. And so their rights were severed. I had a piece of paper with the girls' names on it. So we're talking about a girl who was 8 and another one 10. The 10-year-old was in Reno with her father, and I called her and talked to her for about a minute. And a delightful girl, you could just tell in her voice. She was very concerned about her siblings. And regrettably, I would not hear her voice again for 5 years. Her father asked me lots of questions, wanted to know where I lived and where I worked and had the adoption, the legal steps. So that was trouble. We sent photos to her using the return address of social services, and that was it, gone. The other older sister lived only 70 miles away in Santa Barbara, and I called her next, another delightful person. So we arranged with her stepbrother who spoke English to meet her at McDonald's in Santa Barbara the following Saturday. So again, it's been 9 months since the kids had seen each other. So I drove the kids down there. I told them where we were going. They were just thrilled and excited. And it was just bizarre because we pulled up to the this McDonald's. I could see the little girl and the two adults, the stepbrother and his wife. No, that's not her, my kid said. And we get into the parking lot, and I said, yeah, I think, no, that's not her. Get out of the car, I wave to the guy, waves back, no, it's not her. They get closer, my three kids and the girl, just nothing. It was just scary. Standing right next to each other, and there's nothing. It's been 9 months. And so this little girl asked me their birthdays, and I tell her, and she says, yeah, that's them. And she reaches into her little coat, she pulls out 3 little cards that she made for me, and she gave each of them $1. It was so sweet. So I try to explain that in the book by comparing it to me losing my father when I was 7. I had this image of him frozen in my mind that's never changed. He's never changed his shirt, he's never needed to shave. And I imagine the kids, when I got my kids, they were scrawny, they had new clothes, they were bigger. We had the name issue. My daughter got a haircut. I just don't think they recognized each other. So we ended up having a good time at the beach, and we now travel, or have continued seeing her twice a year or so. We go to Santa Barbara. Then the daughter who disappeared, I guessed that maybe her father went to jail or something, and that's what happened. So she was sent to Mexico, and she came back to the States somehow. I didn't ask. A couple of years ago, I was out on the deck of my house in Gilroy and got a phone call, and there she was on the phone crying. Just a real sweet person. And I read in the documents, the few documents I have of my kids' past, she basically fed them, took them to school, took care of them. So within weeks, all 5 kids were at Disneyland with me, and for our reunion, it was quite touching. That older girl is a very sweet person on the outside, and inside she's tough. She's a tough kid. And she was the very first person in her family to graduate from high school. We went to the ceremony in May, and she's now the very first person in college. So that's pretty neat. Yeah. The mother, nobody's heard from for 7 or 8 years. Other questions?
So what was the key to like parenting skills that you learned? Because you might probably have a lot of advice to give to kids.
Yeah, you don't want my advice. Well, it was, I tell people I had very low standards, okay? Almost none at all. I knew I had to feed them. I knew I had to bathe them, get them bathed. I knew I had to get them to school on time. There was so much that I did not know. I just acknowledged that. And so I just went along and did the best that I could. I learned a lot from people at work. I talked about the advisory crew that I had at work. So every time I had a question, like what do I do at a parent-teacher conference, I was actually thrown out of my daughter's kindergarten assessment test, by the way. And then I talk in the book about co-parenting with Google. So when there was something that I didn't know, like how to braid, my daughter wanted her hair braided, right? Well, how would I know how to do that? So I'm on Google typing in French braid, looking it up. And one Thanksgiving, I thought I was buying a turkey, but no, I ended up buying a capon. I didn't realize what I'd done. I don't even know what a capon is. I didn't know what it was. And so I'm back on Google looking up capon and how to make gravy and that kind of thing. So I just kind of learned as I went along. Just to explain the kindergarten assessment test thing, I knew it was coming. I didn't know what to do. We went through the alphabet and the numbers and shapes and stuff. And I asked a lady at work, do I bring a pencil or a gift or something? And so I went in there with my daughter to do the assessment test, and the lady asked her, "What's your address?" And so my daughter says 2443. Go ahead.
Well, Carol, can you turn on the lights?
Oh,
Turn the lights on?
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry.
So the kindergarten teacher asked my daughter, "What's your address?" And she says 2443, and I said, "Cesar Chavez, that's our street." And the kindergarten teacher turns around and says, "This is to assess her skills, not your skills. So you can wait outside." Do I have time for one more quick story?
Oh, sure.
So when I got my daughter, she wanted 100 kisses before she went to sleep, right? Well, I tried that once, okay? That's a lot of kisses. So I ended up doing 27, 28, 29, 90, 91, 92. You know, she never caught on. She's 4, right? So at the assessment test, I was thrown out, but I went back in towards the end. And the last question was, how high can you count?
Oh,
So I'm sitting there, and she's up to 25, 26, and I'm thinking, she doesn't remember that, right? 27, 28, 29, 90, she says. So the kindergarten teacher says, 29's pretty good. So there you go. Those are my parenting skills. That was funny.
So now you're dealing with teenagers.
Yes. Yeah, so people have warned me for years, wait till they become teenagers. So, you know, I've got to go with the flow like everybody else, right? And I'll say this. They're very thoughtful people. When I get home, their homework's done. I think the older two in particular still remember and have an appreciation of having a quiet house with lots of food. The worst things that I deal with are you know, them not turning in their homework sometimes. So you get a couple of zeros there on the report card. But for now, anyway, I know things change. It's, you know, tough out there. There's a lot of bad influences out in the world. But right now, they're still delightful people. I'm still thrilled and lucky to have them.
How do they have problems with school with the race thing, with you being white and then being Hispanic?
Well,
I'm just curious. I mean, the thing
sure.
with the hotel was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's just
think I'd be in their face. My kids went to sue you. I'd be.
well, you know, I did. It was the hotel was owned by the shell companies. I think maybe in a German companies where I kind of tracked it, and I ended up sending an email to somebody, and they ended up selling the hotel. It's not called that anymore. Now it's the Canary Hotel. I don't imagine I had anything to do with that. Well, the answer to your question, my kids are in classes that are 70% Hispanic. So there were, and actually, I remember a couple of years ago, I asked one of my their teachers. I said, "So, you know, what's happening with the adoption thing and me?" And she says, "Well, actually, a lot of my kids are adopted. A lot of them come from foster care." So, the whole discrimination thing is maybe I've gotten used to it. It's improved over time. It was pretty bad at some points. We would go into restaurants and people would yell out, you know, "Those aren't your kids." The book begins with me being stopped by the police, who insist on me showing him paperwork that they're my kids. I said, "No, I don't have paperwork. They're my kids. Regular parents don't have papers, and I don't either." That took me a while to get out of that one. Even recently, in a restaurant nearby, I'm not going to say the name, we go in, and the lady who works there comes down the hall, and she's got questions for me. Where do they come from? Why do you have them? Where's your wife? That kind of thing. Every time we go in there, she's got questions. And I remember telling a friend of mine on the phone about this, and I kind of blasted this lady because I was just annoyed. And then I felt guilty. So a few weeks later, there we are again. We go into the restaurant, and here she comes, right down the hall. No water, no chips, no salsa. What are you going to do if the mother comes back? Doesn't say hello. What are you going to do if the mother comes back? Well, she doesn't know where they are. What if she finds you? What are you going to do? What if she says she wants the kids? So, you know, we get some of that, and we just learn to deal with it. And like I say, it's better than it used to be. Yeah, good question.
It's interesting because you say that you're half Puerto Rican,
Yes.
but you don't look at them. There's no connection to the Hispanic
Right.
part of your
Yeah.
heritage.
Yes. Well, when I first explored adopting, I went online and found out there are 500,000 kids, and I think 27% are Hispanic. And yes, I am half Hispanic. So my father is Puerto Rican. My mother, blonde hair, green eyed, Missouri. So I have a lot of cousins who are from Puerto Rico. I went there, and I'm familiar with the culture and appreciate that. So I knew or wanted to adopt Hispanic kids right off the bat, you know, it's been a great experience for me. One of the biggest mistakes I made, and one of the biggest regrets I have, well, two actually. One is not taking all 5 kids, and the other one is my kids spoke Spanish pretty well when I met them, and they don't now. They kind of lost that part. So my oldest actually is taking Spanish now, which is weird, in high school, to get that back. And I should have been more diligent there, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Did you have any nannies or tutors or anything like that while the kids are?
Yeah, good question. I was telling Carol. Yeah. So when I first got them, I'm a single guy, right? So I don't have, and I was in a town that I didn't know anybody. I had no family there, so I needed childcare. So as a foster parent, that was my status at the time. There's no such thing as an adoption license. In California and most states, you can't adopt anyone unless they've been in your home for 6 months. So you get a foster care license with the intention of adopting, and then you adopt. So as a foster care parent, I got the payments, right? So the payments for the first month was $1,368, and I wrote a check to the YMCA for childcare for $1,342. So I had $28 left over. So they were in that after-school program when we were in Santa Maria. When we moved here, and the kids were now 4, 6, and 8, I hired a nanny. Yep, full-time. And a delightful person, a lady in Gilroy, married, a couple of kids. And I actually give her most of the credit for my children having their homework done when I get home now, even though she's been gone now for a couple of years, because she taught them well, right? So yes, that was another co-parenting partner there.
That's good.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
As a father of 2, I must say you've got guts.
Well, I'll tell you. I started off the talk with saying, what were you thinking? And I had a pleasant life before I met my kids, and I had lots of fun, played lots of golf and sailing and traveled, but I was alone. And at night, you're by yourself or you're not, right? And so my life didn't have a lot of purpose to it. And it has a lot of purpose now. And so even though, I've obviously helped my kids and I've given them an opportunity to have a better life, they gave me an opportunity to have a better life too. And I don't ever think that I gave them more than they gave me. And I think it's still in my favor, because I'm even now, I was thinking about it last night, they go to bed now and they're asleep like that. And I love that, because that's the opposite of how it used to be, right? And that still gives me some good feeling. Yes.
David, why did you choose to write a book, and how on earth did you have time to
Well, it's hard not to write a book when you've got all these things going on. Well, I'll tell you something funny. There are actually 2 chapters in the book about my dealings with social services, because there were social workers who were opposed to me getting the kids. And they told my social worker that. And he told me, I'm under a lot of pressure, they're telling me I'm crazy, I shouldn't do it. And so one month, because I mentioned before, social workers came to our house once a month, a lady calls on the phone, and she says, I'm replacing this lady on the visit this month, and it's just a coincidence, she said. Well, of course, what does that mean? It's just a coincidence. So she comes into our house. The kids instantly recognize her as a robber, and so they're pretty much gone. We take a little tour around the house. I'm planning on it ending at the front door, because my kids are uncomfortable. She had never met them, because she didn't know who they were when she came in. So her thing was a guy adopting 3 kids. Must be something wrong with that, right? So as we're going through the tour, I show her my daughter's room, and she likes my daughter's furniture, and she wants to buy it. So she tells me that she's wanted a set like this for a long time, and I said, no, it's my daughter's. Does it have another bed? Yeah, it's in the guest room. Well, I've been looking for a set like this for a long time. Yeah, sorry. Is it made out of walnut? Yeah, I think it's made out of walnut. So I remember standing with this woman thinking, see, at that time I'd taken some notes, like a journal, just to sort of decompress every night because of all the stuff going on. And I remember standing there with this woman thinking, if you write a book, do not put this in it because no one will believe you. And I instead put it in the book in a chapter called Walnut, and it's a very popular chapter. So where did I find time? You know, I had notes that I took. There were periods of time, a year and a half or two, where I not only didn't write anything, I didn't even read the book, so I kind of had to go back. So it took me probably 5 years to write, and I would do a few pages now and then, and towards the end, I would put the kids to bed, I'd go to bed for a little while, I'd get back up and try to write some more. So it took a long time, but when I found a publisher, and she was a pretty strong editor, then we pulled the thing together, and yeah. 260, my 263-page resume is what I call it.
It's pretty impressive that you got an excerpt in Reader's Digest.
Yeah, that was amazing. I didn't do anything. I just found out about it. It was in August. We learned it would be in the November issue. Worldwide, 21 languages, 17 million copies. It just still doesn't really register. So a couple of days later, I get an email from Reader's Digest saying you have some pictures that you can send us. So sure, here you go. 48 hours later, they've arranged for us to spend 2 days with a film crew from Hollywood, basically, down in Santa Barbara, at the high school, the foster home, the strawberry field, the horse whisperers ranch. If we were awake and not eating, they were filming. They brought a stylist for my daughter. She's 12, okay? We have no style. They brought a wardrobe person. We don't have a wardrobe. You know, we can change our socks or something, right? It was just hilarious. Everywhere, big banks of lights and the microphone with a furry thing on it. So they filmed us for about 17 hours over these 2 days to make a 3-minute video that's on the Reader's Digest iPad app. Okay, anybody here have the Reader's? I don't either. So I have not seen the video until last night when I was at the dentist, and I'm telling them about it because they're looking at Reader's Digest. And the lady at the dentist's office, bless her heart, has an iPad, downloads the Reader's Digest, and I watched the movie yesterday for the first time.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, they wanted pictures for the magazine. So back we go, a whole new crew. They rented an estate on a cliff south of Santa Barbara that we were supposed to pretend was our house. It's not. we brought, I swear to God, we brought pajamas. They told us what they brought. They sent us a list, right? The wardrobe person. Okay, so I don't forget. When the director didn't know where we are, she screams out, "Where's the talent?"
The talent.
And her assistant would come running over. If she says, "Where's the talent?" that means she's looking for you. I said, "Okay." So we're in this estate, and we set up games. We had to bring pictures, books, toys, all that stuff. We pretended we lived there. 2,000 photos they took in one day, right? They get horses from somewhere that they bring to pretend it's our horses. They hire a guy to bring a sprinkler to turn it on so you run through it, okay? So we start off at about 9 and we end up at 9 p.m. on the beach with the photo people shooting pictures with these horses. And they used 2 pictures in Reader's Digest. Yeah, it was amazing. I can tell you, the Reader's Digest people have it together. They really do. I mean, they were like, dang. And the director, you know, a delightful person, if you remain in sight. Okay? If you're out of sight, where's the tail? Oh my gosh. And there's been some interesting reactions from the kids too, because you know a lot of the kids' teachers have bought the book. So my daughter has been asked to sign the book by her classmates and by some of her teachers. But the funniest thing is that my little one, who's in 5th grade, his teacher holds up the book. You know, Brian's dad, his name is Brian. I changed all the kids' names in the book. His real name is Brian. Brian's dad wrote a book, you know, that's great. So the next day, a kid that doesn't really like Brian goes up to him and says, Brian, I read your dad's book last night, it sucks. So, but that was actually the day the article came out in the Dispatch, right? And so at a recess, a girl that Brian doesn't know, another 5th grader, comes up to him and says, Brian, I saw you in the paper. You're living the dream. I want to be just like you. And so Brian's at, you know, we're eating dinner. He says, Daddy, are we living the dream? All right, we're living the dream. I still have lots of fun with them. You can tell, huh? Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Where can we get the book?
At Booksmart,
At
downtown
Booksmart.
Morgan Hill,
I hope you enjoy it.
What's the address?
80 East 2nd Street.
80 East 2nd Street. And this is a bestseller, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Regional bestseller.
there, you got your free plug.
Thank you. I appreciate it.